Do 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 do. Hey, how's it going? It's Nancy Gamon. Thanks for hanging out with me today. You know I love to experiment with ice dyeing, which is a super fun way of coloring fabric using ice cubes and powdered dye. As the ice melts, the powder turns to liquid and beautiful colors melt into the fabric. So when people are starting out on this adventure, they often ask, how do you layer these things up? Do you put the dye right on the fabric and then put a layer of ice cubes over that? Or do you cover the fabric with ice first and then sprinkle dye on top? So today I'm going to try both of those methods side by side so we can compare the results and you can see which effect you prefer. I'm starting with two pieces of identical fabric that have been folded and rolled in the same way. On one side, I'm going to put the powdered dye directly onto the fabric and then cover it with a layer of ice cubes. On the other side, I'm going to put the ice on first and then cover it with a layer of dye. I'm going to start by putting ice on this side so I can do the dye at the same time. I'm using Procyon Fiber Reactive dye. I'm going to start by sprinkling on a ½ teaspoon of Aquamarine on each side. This one I'm just going straight onto the fabric, and a ½ teaspoon on this side, covering the ice. Now I'm using a ½ teaspoon of dragon fruit. And I'm finishing up with a ½ teaspoon of deep purple. I put 20 ice cubes on this side, so now I'm going to put 20 ice cubes on this side too. Now the projects are ready to sit overnight. I'm going to let them rest for about 22-24 hours, and I'll see you back for the results. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. So this is the one where the dye was placed directly onto the fabric. Looks like we've got a lot of good saturated color here. It's looking very dark right now, but of course once things are rinsed out, they do tend to lighten up a little bit. Right now looking very strong. Now here's the fabric where the dye was sprinkled on top of the ice cubes and melted down into the fabric that way. Again, we've got some good strong colors. Looks like the color areas maybe are a little bit more subtle. See what happens once the rinsing takes place. So I'll take care of the rinsing and washing and fixing behind the scenes. If you'd like more information about that process, check out my video, How to Make Kaleidoscope Dyes. So I think once the fabric is dry, we'll be able to take a closer look at the differences between the two results. Here are the two pieces of fabric, washed, dried, and pressed with a very hot iron. Looking at the fabric where the dye was placed directly on the surface, I see a greater range of value. So the light is very light and the dark is very dark. The colors seem to hang together in clusters on the fabric. There's not as much bleeding or mixing or feathering. Taking a look at the fabric where the dye was sprinkled on top of the ice and then melted through, there's a lot more subtlety and mixing of the color. There are little tendrils where two colors meet and combine. There's more nuance to the center of the piece. There's just a lot more going on visually. There are a few areas where there's a dark, but it's not as prevalent as on the piece where the dye was placed directly on the fabric. So let's just take a look at them again side by side. So I'd say the two main differences were kind of the depth or strength of color and the nuance or the subtlety and the little whispers that happen or not. Which look do you prefer? If you'd like to experiment together, I'd love to see you at one of my virtual workshops. Sign yourself up for my email newsletter list. There's a registration link in the video description. This is the best way to get first chance at workshop registration and score discounts. I hope to be creating with you soon. Do 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 do.